Hi, so I've just taken a little wander from the sanctuary back there, just into the jungle a little bit. Judging by what I can see on the screen, it's looking a lot lighter there than it looks out here, so I'm just gonna talk until it gets a bit darker, because I don't really want to have to find my way back. There is a path, but all the same I don't really want to find my way back in the dark. I was a little cautious of putting this update up, or making this talking, because it's been 2 ceremonies now, and everything's quite confusing. I thought, of course I've been encouraged not to come with any expectations, but it's kind of inevitable that you have a sense of the sort of experience you might have, even if the content is very different. So I've heard plenty of people's accounts and read plenty of people's accounts about their ayahuasca experiences, and quite often it's a case of, oh, I saw X and that made me think Y. So for instance, I saw my family and how I hadn't been paying enough attention to them, and that made me think, I need to sort that out. I need to be a better person in that respect, because it will improve my life and it's important for those around me. I think, well, maybe those experiences are just recounted after enough reflection that it's become clear what things mean. But for me, so far, things have been quite a lot more abstract. So the first session, we all, of course, went into the ceremonial maloka, and we'd set up our chairs in advance earlier in the evening, so we wouldn't have to be scurrying around doing anything with that. Everybody receives a blessing from the shaman who leads the ceremony, who blows mapacho smoke, that sacred tobacco, on your head. And I need to find out the name for this. It's the leaves that are bound together in a small sheaf, which they then use at that gesture to both make blessings, but also it creates the kind of rhythm accompaniment to the icaros, the songs that they sing that are meant to guide the medicine. And they certainly play quite an influence when the visions are going on. So that happens first, and then one by one people come up, and they're given a drink of ayahuasca from a cup. As I had been led to expect, the storage for the ayahuasca is not quite fitting with the kind of sacred way that it's treated. It's stored in like used cola bottles, although with the labels taken off. That's also blessed with more mapacho and with an icaro, so there's maybe half an hour or so of this sort of preparatory work before the drinking begins. One by one people go up. They're given different amounts. In the first ceremony, I think we were pretty much all given the same amount, that's what we were told, and then that's adjusted afterwards based on how we describe the experience, and it's all in the view of Don Howard, who is more sort of involved with us day to day, and he's hearing what we're saying, hearing about the experiences, and so on. So a lot of the mechanics of what happens in the ceremony, I think, aside from that, I'm gonna write about, and I guess aren't that different. There's a crazy bug flying in front of me. Okay, it's gone. So I'll maybe save more details from that, and I'll just talk about what went on for me. In that first ceremony, at first it really kind of, when it began, it hit really hard. I could see sort of contour lines like on a map, but just across my whole vision. And then gradually this kind of came to manifest a wall. It looked like a wall of the maloka, just wood paneling with a kind of line along the top, because in the maloka they have, in place of windows, there's the mosquito gauze there, so there's this sort of space along the top. So it seemed to be that, but it was right in front of me, and of course I'm sitting with my back to one wall, and the other wall is quite a long way away, so this was there, felt really solid and real. And then what appeared on the wall were kind of quite simplistic, scary symbols like skulls and crossbones. There were disembodied and gnashing animal teeth kind of coming through it aggressively. There were danger signs, exclamation signs and triangles, this kind of stuff. And generally that was a kind of, this is a scary wall, this is not something you want to go through. And from what Don Howard had been saying earlier, he said, you know, when you see something that scares you, or he was speaking for himself, I think, if he sees something that scares him, he leans into it. And this is kind of what you have to do. It's a challenge. And it seemed sort of clear to me even at the time that, okay, this is a kind of defense mechanism, and behind that wall, I think, is probably a lot of stuff that I want to find out about myself. But one of the reasons that I have been so long very negative about myself is because I've put up these blocks to being able to see those positives, that instead it's a don't look there, don't see the good stuff, don't feel positive. But in that moment it was very difficult to do so. I tried to push towards it, nothing happened. The wall kept appearing several times over the course of that ceremony. But as a sort of a general I guess experience, I was really stuck in my head throughout all of this ceremony. That's what a couple of other people said as well, and even some who had got previous experience of drinking ayahuasca. And so you're just kind of going, oh, what's that? What does that mean? I don't know. Pause a minute. What's that? And then kind of analysing, going, oh, maybe that means that. What does this tell me? What should I be doing? And it's just constant chatter going on instead of being able to just go with the experience and trust that somehow, in the end, it's going to make some kind of sense. So that was difficult, and I definitely didn't escape that in the first ceremony. I saw a number of things, a lot of which seemed to be the kind of filler material that, as far as I can tell now anyway, didn't make clear sense to me. There were a lot of, in the beginning, sort of nightmarish visions. It was like I was trapped in some kind of disturbing carnival, like a neon, lurid lit carnival, with like a carousel and its animals coming by, leering at me, all of them with this kind of sick neon glow. And it really felt like I'm trapped in some kind of demented circus reality. So that wasn't nice. And a lot of it wasn't nice to begin with, and it was very intense, and because there's a sort of nausea building as well towards a purge, that definitely felt like a big challenge just to be able to endure that. When the purging began, I was worried I wasn't going to be able to keep any of the ayahuasca down at all, actually, because I'd been pretty sick throughout the day, just sort of traveler's stomach going on. But it was surprising, it was okay in the event. I wasn't even the first person to purge. And it's interesting, actually, I'm just saying it very easily now, purge, but it is different, because you're not just throwing up because you had something nasty. It feels like it's very connected with what's going on in your head. It's very linked to the content of it, and for hearing other people's accounts afterwards, that became very clear that for others, they're saying things like they had to throw up all of the alcohol that they've ever drunk as self-medication. If they've had troubles with like alcohol dependence or even abuse, or throwing up a really dark part of themselves which they've tried to escape before, but they've just kept there. So I didn't feel it quite as profoundly as that, but I felt like I was being kind of tortured by something, maybe myself, being made to throw up, and I could see as I did so this kind of gaping maw, quite a few images that I saw that were just basically deeply disgusting to me. Maybe they weren't sort of objectively so, but they caused that response. and this kind of horrible gaping mouth which seemed to have a rippling series of pools in it was there, and then when I needed to vomit, it was sort of my mouth. I could see it, but it was my mouth, and it was kind of taunting me as though, you can't do it, you can't get that done, what's going on? Which was confusing and not very pleasant. Some other images that appeared were a sort of bizarre old computer graphics kind of experience. Quite a lot of sort of computer game stuff appeared for me, and one seemed to be this whizzing, it was like old Nintendo or even those old BBC computer style graphics, and there was a bright yellow kind of panel, and along the bottom was a running road with white chevrons on, and I was meant to kind of enter, what am I? What fundamentally am I? What is it that gives me meaning? And words that came up were like, oh, I'm a learner. I like learning stuff. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't just like randomly learning stuff. And that kind of got deleted. And then I kind of tentatively put in writer, because that's a label, an idea. I'm wondering if that is really what I want to be and what I want to do. But as I put it in, that whole kind of game shut down and kind of went, no, we're not really dealing with that right now. Some people have said that it is said in general that in the first session with ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca is kind of getting to know you and is sort of scanning through what your issues are. Maybe that's true. I felt really kind of disappointed and lost that I didn't have any sense of that maternal, nurturing spirit that people talk about when they talk about drinking ayahuasca. I didn't feel any of that kind of closeness and compassion, and I felt really quite desperate as my mind was churning and churning. I, mentally, not out loud, found a couple of times I was just screaming, please, please help me. And nothing came in response. It was, instead I kind of went, yeah, well, that's not what I'm meant to be doing. I'm meant to be learning from this experience, and I'm meant to be finding out how to work on myself. I'm not meant to be just getting the answer and the help. This is the interesting thing. This is, I think, maybe by trying to describe what I see and trying to write down what I saw afterwards, by trying to communicate it, you start making sense of it. Although, there's also another kind of feeling I've got, which is, or you're imposing meaning on these things afterwards. Does that make a difference? I don't know, because I'm only making sense of stuff that happened in my head, and maybe that's what you do. But I always had this kind of leery feeling about trying to impose meaning that I want on the events, rather than really trying to understand what they are. This happened. Can I understand it? No, so I'll try and make it mean something that I do understand that. So I don't know, and I have a feeling that lots of the accounts that I've heard of people's ayahuasca experiences have kind of glossed that a bit. It is that everybody seems to say, I think it's true, that a lot of the work, a lot of the integration stuff happens afterwards, and that can mean weeks or months afterwards. So I think more than likely a lot of the meaning and the sense of what's changed, what it's about, only develops over time as you try and integrate it into your life. So I've already been talking quite a lot, so I won't go into the second session, which had some similarities, but did have quite a few differences, and did have a couple of kind of really, I hope they will prove to be quite meaningful, intense moments, and I've only been processing those today. This is the day after the second ceremony. So it's getting dark, and I don't want to have to just whiz through all of that. So I hope you don't mind if perhaps just string this out a little bit more and give these ceremonies a bit more breathing space so I can describe them and my responses to them. I'll just add that it was really important to have this sharing circle. It was not the day after the first ceremony. We had a day off in which everybody began the day kind of with a sense of what the fuck just happened, but in this sort of slow motion, relaxed way. And then over the course of the day, you could see everybody, and I could feel myself kind of feeling more relaxed, and I think things began to start making more sense to everybody from their own experiences after that initial, you wake up and you're like, what the fuck, what did that mean? And they begin, I don't know if I've said this already, they began the day after with a nice flower bath, which is maybe not quite as exotic as it sounds, sitting on a piece of plastic furniture whilst they dump cold water on you, but it has got lots of flowers in and smells very nice, and then more mapacho smoke and another icaro, and it really kind of calms and resets, and was a really nice way to begin the day. The day after the sharing circle, everybody sat around and explained what they wanted to. They didn't have to say anything in particular. They could explain how it had been for them, what they felt, and it really felt that we all kind of loosened up a bit to each other in that moment, because everybody made themselves vulnerable, everybody revealed something about why they were there, and there were a few tears, there was certainly a lot of compassion. It was really special because it was a moment where there was just no risk. There was no risk that anybody was going to be a dick. There was no risk that anybody was going to spoil that moment for anybody else. And it was fascinating to hear what other people said, because as they did, you could feel resonances with your own experience. I think everybody took a little something from everybody else's experience and could relate to it, both sympathetically and also empathetically, because they'd experienced something on that wavelength too. It felt like something that we could do with more in other situations in our world, in our modern world perhaps, where it's not simply a conversation, but you just go around and everybody gets to just say their piece, nothing else is said, the next person speaks, the next person speaks. The discussion and the kind of building on that happened afterwards, but just that space to be able to talk individually created a lot of, I think, meaningful and quite deep interpersonal bonds, and it's made the group feel a lot closer, which was really great. Building up to the second ceremony, there was a much more kind of relaxed, still tense, but mutually supportive and kind of more positive vibe leading up to that. So it seems, at least on the screen I'm looking at, we'll see what YouTube does to it, it's almost dark on the screen now. It's pretty damn dark out here, so I'm gonna go. We're not drinking more ayahuasca tonight. We're having a bobinsana ceremony, which is actually a plant that's added to the ayahuasca that they make here. It's meant to open your heart. I'm told that means a kind of light-hearted, a very kind of more interactive and fun experience. So I'm looking forward to that. I think we all are, and see how that'll be. But I will tell you more about that and the second ayahuasca ceremony next time. Thanks.